Hello, boys, and welcome back. This one is going to be a very long video, so if you're actually going to watch it, I would suggest grabbing a cup of tea or whatever you fancy, because we might be here for a while. Before we get into it, let me make something clear. The point of this video is not to whine, is not to shame other people as it were. Rather, the point is to repeat and perhaps reinforce what Jean-Paul Sartre once said. Hell is other people. How is that related to WoW? Well, we are about to find out. Let me start with a bit of an introduction for the people who are new to this channel. Most players generally call me Ultra, which is short for Ultra Nuke, and in spite of what you might think, it's got very little to do with DPS. It's got more to do with accidentally leaving a pizza in the oven for 3 hours because, well, I forgot about it. When my wife found it, it was just, well, ash on a tray, so she jokingly asked whether I was trying to Ultra Nuke it and whether I had anything to do with Hiroshima by any chance. Now, I have played every relevant role and class in WoW Classic. Back in the original, and I am referring to late 2004, I played a warrior tank, a resto shaman, a holy priest, a frost mage, fire mage, affliction, destro warlocks. Over the years, I played, well, everything else. A paladin tank, rogue, hunters, whatever your favorite class, whatever your favorite spec might be, if it's viable in a raid or in PvP, I played it. But I'm not going to go that far back, mostly because I no longer have a lot of data from back then. Not a lot of screenshots, very few videos. You know, at the time, my computer could barely handle WoW, forget about recording. Besides, what was I going to record? 240p videos, you know? So instead, I will be talking about WoW Classic since 2019. Thanks to YouTube, to a faster computer and a significantly larger hard drive, some of those things have survived. You're watching one right now. Now, the worst thing about WoW is actually related to loot. And let me clarify that. It's not about loot itself, but rather about the way it makes people act, what they will do, how they'll act in order to obtain it, or when they don't obtain it. I'm going to be as clear as I can be about it. I'm not claiming to be an angel myself, and while I would never do or say the things you're about to see and hear in this video, I can act like a cunt myself at times. And once you've watched the video, it's up to you to decide whether I was right or wrong. Don't hesitate to call me out on it if you feel like it. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to be telling you the truth. I'm not upset about any of these things. It's just, old characters that have long since been abandoned, so, you know. So, let's start with 2019. WoW Classic was launched, and since nostalgia is one hell of a drug, I created a mage. I ended the original vanilla playing a mage, so when it came to picking a class, it wasn't even open for discussion. I was going to play a mage again, at least as my first character. Sometime before the launch, though, we had J. Allen Brack with his infamous statement that you think you do, but you don't. And that statement has been memed to no end. With the amount of people jumping on Classic WoW servers, players felt that the man had been incredibly wrong. See, we do want it, but I don't think they understood the message, or rather the meaning of that message, because, in my opinion, it never meant you don't want to play vanilla WoW. It rather meant with everything being known, nothing new to discover, you're not going to like what things are going to be like. Everything is going to be vastly different from what you remember, especially the parts that you loved, and almost everyone is going to act like a fucking cunt. In my opinion, he was right. But to be fair, I too jumped on that you think you do train, as in I too made fun of his statement. Back then, raids were not going with 20 to 25 warriors, and there were no GTKPs, there were no sims. Hardly anyone knew which piece of gear was better. The guild I was in, at least, had people arguing about whether it's best to have a lot of intellect or a lot of spell power. And while this created a community of noobs, many of which were dedicated to clicking spells from the spellbook, it was also something that meant that most people stood a chance to join a guild, a chance to get loot, a chance to make friends. They would fail in raids, but they would fail together and they would be shit together. At least that's how things worked out for me and for many of my friends. Fast forward or rewind to 2019, and things were indeed very different. Joining a guild was about playing the meta. Getting gear was about whether you farmed or bought sufficient gold. I mean, actually, forget farming, because there would be a dedicated so called mafia group protecting slash farming everything from Devil's or Leather to Black Lotus. Even fishing, they would do who in fishing areas, and if they did not recognize the name, they would mass report you. Forget leveling and questing outdoors as well. Everyone was getting boosted from Ragefire to Shadowfang Keep, from Scarlet Monastery to Moradon, and finally to Zul'Gurub. Forget joining a guild unless you were playing a meta spec, showing up with your bags full of consumables as well. Forget playing your character outside of raids, because world buffs would be required for later raids, so you would get them and you would log out until the next raid. Chronobones were introduced later, much later, but it was too late to matter. Getting a spot in a guild and in a raid depended on parses, something that didn't quite exist, or at least wasn't that popular back in the day. If I remember correctly, something similar to Warcraft logs, albeit much more primitive, started being used in late Burning Crusade, but even then, few guilds were actually using that tool. In all honesty, I can't even remember what it was called, only that the name contained either raids or logs. Warcraft logs, no, World of logs, World of raids, WoW raids, something like that. Now, I tend to be pretty good at the games I play, and this is no exception. You'll see that, so there's no point in playing the modest, humble card here. The first server I rolled on was so mediocre that it ended up dying. During our very first raid in Molten Core, I won a roll for the Mana Igniting Cord on my mage. It's that belt with crit and spell power. But the raid leader, I mean, who the hell needs one in Molten Core anyway, right? Stole it, claiming that he asked us to roll just to show interest, but that loot would actually be decided by a loot council, which at the moment was represented by him for now, and the loot council, which was him, decided to give it to him. As such, I had no problem leaving the guild and the server. The server was dying, there were roughly 2 guilds, including ours, that were able to raid MC, and neither one could fill a raid, so, you know. So I said goodbye to that server. A real life friend and I transferred to a more populated server, Zandalar Tribe, and this was an RP-PvP realm. I joined a great guild in terms of social experience. Its name, as you can see, was Wandering Legion. But when it came to raiding and loot, the guild was utter shit, to put things mildly. Something to do with RP PvP servers, probably. You have to play there to understand what I mean. The guild was using EPGP loot system, which in short stands for effort points, gold points. You get effort points for joining raids, you spend gold points when you loot an item. You get the ratio, and that ratio, the higher it is, the higher your priority on gear is. So this is how I realized that the guild had no future in Max. It wasn't about the loot system itself, mind you. It was more about the results. Because what happened, at least with me, was that I could see an item dropping off Gatun, the caster belt, being given to our elemental shaman. Now, don't get me wrong, the elemental shaman was a nice person, he was doing well for an elemental shaman. He had a higher EPGP ratio, so of course he did get it. But it was at that point I realized that we were never going to clear Nax. I still remembered Nax from back in the day, and I clearly remembered that there was no room for elemental shamans there. You would need a metric ton of DPS to kill bosses before they killed you. A guild that assigned what's best in slot for a mage and a warlock to an elemental shaman was just never going to make it in there. It gave me no satisfaction to see that I was right when the guild eventually died and disbanded. It was only natural, because once Nax was released, we obviously wiped in there like a bunch of half-assed morons, something that would be a compliment for about 80% of that guild. It's what you will be seeing in the background in a moment. It will be my mage basically running out of mana on patchwork, wiping on patchwork because our DPS was utter shit, our healers were shit, our tanks were shit. Of course, once it became clear that we couldn't kill bosses, as things were, people just stopped showing up to raids, and eventually this led to the guild disbanding. No surprise there. Now, let me be clear, it's not that giving me that one item, the belt, could have changed things. It wouldn't have changed anything. The problem had more to do with the dead guild mentality, which was prevalent and it affected other things as well. World buffs, bring them if you can, and only if the tank managed to get them too, because, well, you'll get aggro otherwise. Consumables, only if you can afford it. Besides, it wasn't just that one item. Many other items that were best in slot for warriors, for example, would go to an enhancement shaman. Like, I remember the weapon dropping off Cthulhu, I think it was an axe, going to our enhancement shaman while our warriors were basically crying. Best in slot at the time caster items would go to a Moonkin. The results spoke for themselves, and you're about to see that in the video here in the background. This was recorded during our last raid, and at this point you can see that 3 people did not show up. People had already stopped showing up because we could not kill bosses, right? At the time my mage was still called Moonspell because you had to pick an RP name on the RP PvP server, so yeah. It's also a black metal band from back in the day, or Doom, I don't know, whatever. Point is that, as you can see, I was using the weapon oil, I was using the flask, I was using a couple of elixirs. Well, most of the people in the raid did not. They did not bother with these things. And this is how we were failing to kill patchwork. You can see the DPS down here, and this is not good. I can assure you it's nowhere close to good, right? And the reason for which we've got these mages showing here as well is not because they were doing good DPS, but rather because they were stealing ignites, right? Getting lucky with who was stealing and rolling the ignite at the time. So, what could I do? When the guild died, because we went from initially from 37 people showing up to 34, then to 30, and then we did not even have 25 people showing up for a raid, right? And of course the guild died. So what could I do? I once again jumped servers, and there weren't too many raiding guilds left on the Horde side of things on Zandalari tribe, so I ended up transferring to Shazra, which was a very populated server. I joined the Nax guild there, and after a few hiccups, we started clearing the raid properly in terms of parsing, I did okay for my gear, and I will show you that in a moment. But as you can see, right here, right now, I am completely out of mana, having used everything I could use, from potion, dark rune, to popping evocation, and at this point patchwork is at 39%, and you can see that basically every melee is already dead, right? So like I said, I will show you parses in just a moment. Now this, to be clear, was the new name for my mage when I transferred to Shastra, and these were the parses I ended up with. We'll discuss how this happened and what happened here on this server in just a moment. Now, you've seen the parses, and I want to make this crystal clear, and you can also see that here in the beginning of this video, because you can see my mage, and you can recognize the gear. This is the MC chest, Blackwing Lair bracers, the Blackwing Lair staff from Nefarian, which you can also see here. This, if I remember correctly, is the MC wand, not 100% sure about it. This is the blue belt, Bantok sash, right? This, I think, this would be the pair of gloves from Cthulhu. These are Netherwind pants, I think, I'm not sure, I think this would be the Enigma boots. Cthulhu ring, can't remember what this thing was. This was the drop threat trinket from Thaddeus, and this was Neltarian Steer. And this was after playing through and farming AQ and Nax for a while. So this is how I ended up with those parses. Of course, the gear was not the only explanation, but with my assignments, for example, kiting on Gluth, and with bad RNG, and with a bad raid leader, which constantly led to random deaths, thus losing world buffs, this was the best I could do. Not good, not terrible. Now, I should clarify something. It's not so much that I'm a dad gamer. I am both of those things, a dad and a gamer, but I have played in hardcore guilds back in the day, guilds that were competing for world firsts back when no one knew what weak auras or other add-ons were, when you had to develop your own strategies to figure out how a boss worked, what the mechanics were, how to counter them, and so on. Now, trust me when I say that those guilds had gamers that would make the sweatiest 2026 gamers look like lazy casuals at best. So why did I play in these guilds instead of going for the sweatiest of them all? Well, it's because I too failed to understand what J. Allen Black really meant when he said, "You think you do, but you don't." From where I was standing, with the game being solved, as they say, there was no point in joining a hardcore guild. The game was easy, so easy that anyone could clear everything with minimal effort, so a hardcore guild wasn't necessary as far as I was concerned. Hardcore methods, loot distribution wouldn't matter, wouldn't be necessary, and So while I could push for a 99 on most bosses, with the right conditions, mostly revolving around gear, assignments, and tactics, I felt I wouldn't have to. But after my experience on Zandalar Tribe, I realized I had been wrong. 2019 casuals were actually worse than 2004 casuals. Much worse, in fact. Because at least in 2004, they had an excuse. The game hadn't been solved yet. They couldn't watch YouTube tutorials and so on. This is why I joined that so-called hardcore Nax guild on Shastra, which you can see here. It was called Meow, and it may have been the most hated guild on the server. I figured, fuck it, if casual guilds won't work, let's go, I can handle hardcore, no problem. I was almost right, as in I could easily do my job. I could easily parse 99, again, under the right circumstances. What I couldn't do was, well, I couldn't put up with the bullshit. In order to understand that, you need to think about the job market. Imagine, if you will, that someone is looking to hire you, but they are paying the minimum wage. That's not where things end, however. They also want you to work for 16 hours a day to prove that you deserve to keep that job. Now, faced with those conditions, requirements, if you will, most people would laugh and walk away. After all, if it's paying the minimum wage, things can't be much worse elsewhere, right? They can get any other job for the same pay. That's how things work with raiding as well, as far as I'm concerned. If you're asking me to put in a lot of effort, well, I expect a consistent reward. I don't necessarily mind if I walk out of the raid with nothing, but if that becomes more like the rule instead of the exception, then I'm not interested in putting in extra effort. Because after all, what is the point? You look here and you can see Brilliant Wizard Oil. You can see Zanza, I think this was. I can't remember. You can see the Shadow or Frost. I don't even know. Protection Potion. You can see the Greater Arcane Elixir, I think. I was also using Greater Firepower. You can see a few world buffs, whatever was left at the time, a food buff, and so on and so forth. So this, the point of me going through this, is to basically say that for Nax, I was spending about 2000 gold per reset, and I know that sounds exaggerated, but trust me, it's not. Flask of Supreme Power reached 400 gold for one in Nax, and we were taking just over 3 hours to clear it, and that implied using 2 flasks, so, you know, it kind of added up with everything else, dynamite and, you know, all that other stuff. As such, I ended up quitting raids and the guild after another shitty loot incident. As stated earlier, I ended vanilla wearing the Nefarian staff, which you can still see in the background. Atiesh went to the raid leader, that mage that shows up here as very useful. We had precisely, I think, one Meixna sword, and that went to another mage. So the next Atiesh was going to go to a warlock who never actually got it. The low Feb staff dropped twice, but I passed on it both times. And it's not that I was saving points, as this was a loot council guild actually. It's that the staff had quite a lot of hit on it, and with my shitty gear, which I'll try to see if I can show again, and I don't know if this is the correct video for it, because at the time, no, this is not the correct one. The low step part happened significantly later, when I was at something like 18% hit, and not because I wanted to, but because the hit pieces were, the only pieces I was able to get. Now, like I said, I passed on the low feb staff twice, because I didn't need it. It had a lot of hit, but I was way over hit cap by then. And I needed crit instead. So when Kel'Thuzad finally dropped the staff, I was pretty sure it would go to me. The locks didn't want it, the other mages had Nux weapons. Instead, however, they gave the staff to our druid, which, with this being vanilla, he was just doing fairy fire in raids. And yeah, you heard that right. A so-called hardcore guild gave the Katie staff to our fairy fire bot. So The official reason was that, well, you passed on the low-thep staff, we're not going to tolerate people not taking upgrades to manipulate loot distribution. All the while pretending they couldn't see my explanation, which was like, bro, I am at 18% hit and I don't need a hit staff. In reality, the reason was that the druid was going to level in Burning Crusade as a dream state and he needed a weapon for it. He just happened to also be the flag carrier for the leadership's Warsong Gulch premates, so he was quite popular with them, whereas I was just another mage. I didn't even blink. I G-quit on the spot with an elegant right, go fuck yourselves. Some racial slurs may have escaped my keyboard, but no more than 100 lines in total. I kept it polite. I should explain this part. Again, it wasn't about that particular item. After all, by then, Nax was already on farm in a reasonable amount of time. And there was a different problem, actually. So, like I said, Nax was already on farm. Um, it wasn't even about loot distribution, not about that item. Quite frankly, I didn't even care much about the item anymore because Nax was pretty much over, Vanilla was almost over, and I wouldn't need another weapon to level in Burning Crusade. I had already tested this on PTR, which is what you can see here, and that stuff, it was largely irrelevant. It would have helped me to get more 99 parses, but really no one would have cared anyway. As for parses, to be honest, it's a brief moment of joy and then it's quickly forgotten when you get a super high parse. What I did care about was the bullshit. Like, you can cheat me out of loot, and I actually won't care that much because, it's just pixels, an entry in a database, nothing more. And those pixels expire, or rather, they get replaced quickly. So, who cares? But what I couldn't stand was the bullshit explanations that were thrown my way because you'd have to be completely retarded to believe them. Like it's punishment because you didn't take the low thep staff. I mean, never mind you griefing the guild by doing that, but you're technically some unemployed Swedish or Danish guy living with your mom, and you're basically betting on me being the kind of fool who will buy your bullshit. It's like, man, you're a pleb. If you had 100 more years to develop, you would still be a dumbass. Like, you're not fooling anyone. So it's insulting to me when people attempt to bullshit me to justify cheating, assuming that I will not see through their bullshit. That's basically telling you I think you're a retard, right? So that's all there is to it. It's not about pixel, not about parses, not about the loot itself. And quite frankly, if they had instead said, he's a friend, so tough luck, you'll get it next time, I think I would have been fine with it. Honestly, yeah, I think so. But they chose to go the other way, and so did I. Now, I ended up missing most of Burning Crusade in 2020. I made a mistake. By the time Burning Crusade was released, Shazra looked like it was dying as well, and eventually it did. I rolled a tank on an even more populated server on Gehennas, and raids had been released in their pre-nerf state, so because of that, warriors and paladins in most guilds were getting annihilated by raid bosses like Hiking Molgar, Gruul, Nightbane, and even Prince Malchezaar in Kara. As a druid, though, I had no problems whatsoever. It took exactly one reset until the guild assigned me as the semi-official main tank. I had the experience, I had a character, we could clear stuff average guilds were somewhat struggling with, but the guild did not last. On the third reset, Gruul dropped the infamous DST. As a feral tank, I couldn't care less about it. But Warriors, hunters, and even a retribution paladin were outraged because the guildmaster, a rogue, just took it, claiming that it's, GM privilege. He also stated that it's normal for him to get it first, just like he'll get glaives first. He sort of forgot to mention that to anyone previously, so it wasn't much of a surprise when most of our physical DPS chose to G-quit and the guild disbanded shortly after. So yeah, good luck getting those glaives or even a spot in a guild or a raid, Mr. GM, I guess. Unfortunately, that ended up affecting me as well because, as it turned out, with bosses in their pre-nerf state and with Serpent Shrine Cavern on the horizon, no guilds I could play in needed a feral druid, and the only solution for me would have been to level a new character because paladins and warriors were once again sought after, whereas I ended up being unable to get a guild. And there was another problem. By this time, flying bots, druids mostly, had overtaken Outland. You would spend 2 hours pointlessly trying to get a single mana thistle, and you would still come up empty. I was just tired of it all, and I decided against slaving away at leveling another character. I just said, fuck it, and took a break. I had real stuff in real life to do, a new contract, and so on, so I just, like I said, I took a break. I came back towards the end of that expansion to see whether the game had been somewhat fixed. It hadn't. It was worse than ever. Bots were everywhere. You would quite literally see 10 droids hovering over a possible mana fizzle spot on every layer. Reporting them did nothing because no one was reading those reports. And trust me, I did report a lot of them to no end, but without a result either. The entire game by then revolved around GDKPs and boosting more characters. That's all you would see in chat day in and day out. Iran was basically running the server by this time. Like, if it wasn't for Donald Trump, they still would be, I guess. I joined a few pugs as a healer. Feral tanks were still seen as largely irrelevant, and they would stay so until Sunwell. In short, they were kind of shit. As a healer, so was I, because all I had was off-spec Kara pieces that no one had wanted. Fortunately, however, Activision had announced fresh Wrath of the Lich King servers, and I figured that was the way to go. So, in Wrath of the Lich King, there would be no boosters, or that's what people thought at the time. If there were going to be any, they would probably prefer to spend their time boosting others on established servers, as they would make more gold there due to, demand and offer. GDKPs were not going to exist for a very long time, as people would have no gold on a fresh server. To me, it sounded perfect. A real-life friend and I decided to play Alliance, although I can't quite remember why or who came up with that idea, but that's what we did. Fresh servers were launched a few weeks before the official launch of Wrath of the Lich King, giving me enough time to level a rogue and a shadow priest. The major watching here, this was the guild master of the guild I joined. My rogue here in the raid is the one named Kill, which you will see on bosses without trying too hard, so to speak. Now, I leveled the rogue and the shadow priest, and I joined one of the new guilds on that fresh server, this AFK Friday guild. They were running 2 raids, not splits, but a main raid and an alt raid, so it sounded pretty good. I was changing the main as required by the guild. When they needed my Shadow Priest in Nax to MC on Razuvius or whatever, I would play the Shadow Priest. When they didn't, because the other 2 Shadow Priests showed up, I would play the Rogue. Whichever character didn't make it into the main raid, I would join the alt raid with, and things were going great, and they kept being great for a few months from a social point of view. But there were a few problems. Firstly, a few months into it, Activision decided to open up server transfers, something they initially said they would not allow for fresh servers. But little Bobby Kotick must have needed a new yacht, so what they initially said no longer applied. As such, the server started bleeding people. A few weeks later, you couldn't even find 4 people in the queue for the daily heroic, regardless of the server time. I couldn't even find enchants on the auction house anymore. I would have to wait for 6 hours to get an enchant until a specific guild member logged in, if he logged in, because in some cases that took days, as he was just braid logging. This was getting stupid. When I made those characters, I knew, or rather I thought I knew, that server transfers would not be possible, and I was very happy with that. But this was no longer true. My main at this time had become the rogue, just because we had, I think, 3 Shadow Priests, and we would not need 3 Shadow Priests in a raid. It was more like, okay, which one of you wants to join the alt raid on a Shadow Priest and bring your out here? And I had this pretty good rogue, much better than they would normally expect, and you're about to see that, I guess. So I ended up playing the rogue in the main raid mostly. The other problem was that the GM style, this major thing there in the background, was a bit, well, it was a bit wrong, shall we say. While I think he was an okay person overall, his style, the way he acted when, as a GM and a raid leader, it kind of suggested a hardcore player, but unfortunately, when it came to performing, he didn't quite live up to the reputation, so to speak. So these, including this video, which you can watch on the channel if you're interested, these were the so-called immortal attempts, and our GM was dying on Gothic as an arcane mage during immortal attempts, right? That pissed off a number of good players. It made them quit and they transferred away. As a guild, we were left with a bunch of, I wanna say, failing players mostly. Players who insisted on trying to get the immortal attempt, and at that time my rogue was called Kill. If you are looking at the damage meter, I think you're going to get the point. And with the Undying title, which I already had, it looked somewhat funny, Kill the Undying. Being called Kill the Immortal would have been even funnier, but honestly, I didn't quite care about getting the achievement and the title that came with it. It was irrelevant to me. The other players really wanted it though, so I put up with it. I should say that I was doing very well in raids, usually topping DPS even in very unexpected places. But one raid, the one you're currently watching, we almost got the achievement. And what I mean by that is that we failed to get it. And let me show you what that looked like. This might take a moment, and I will actually turn the sound up for it. Right, here we are on KT.
So
And again, you will be seeing my rogue popping.
Frost resistance aura to the max.
Let's see if we can hear anything here.
I guess Devo aura is fine. Mages, druids. We are on polymorph cyclone duty.
That
in phase 1, please
start.
don't.
Wait.
Okay, I'm gonna let this run for a few minutes with the original sound. Hopefully you will enjoy it. As a reminder, this was the GM, This was my rogue.
Pick your next.
Nice.
Shadow Fisher.
Fisher.
Everybody quiet. Don't celebrate yet.
Picked your next.
Shadow Fisher. Move out.
Shadow-
It's on tank. Move out, tank.
No.
Wow!
Oh my god.
GG!
what
Just as the
happened?
shit was coming in, mate. And we said Shadow Fisher move out, bro. Oh!
Yep. That was it. That was us failing to get immortal half a second for getting it. Because our off tank died in a void zone. After that bloody thing being called out 3 times, move out, move out, move out. Shadow Fisher is on tank, move out. Nope. He didn't get it. So we failed. Now, let me try to explain this thing. This was on the back of the GM giving me a pretty hard time about one of my friends, real life friends, who was in the guild and in the raid as well, and about how he was just not performing up to the standards. I want to make things clear, he was not parsing 99, my friend, but he was a decent player. Something like 70-80 parses, depending on things. I know, not world first or whatever, but again, he was decent, and more importantly, he was over the average in the guild, I would say. So that kind of pissed me off. I had spent 3 weeks listening to the guildmaster whining about my friend, how he's basically tolerating him in the guild because of me. But it was the GM dying a few times on bosses on immortal attempts. It was one of his loaded tanks who died in that void zone you could see earlier. Coupled with the deserted server problems and a number of good players leaving due to the GM's personality, well, the writing was on the wall. I created a level 1 character on another server on Mirage Raceway. I got a kind mage to give me a portal to Dalaran, and I just, looked around for a few hours in Dalaran, in Orgrimmar. The server was almost full. There was plenty of stuff on the auction house, plenty of people looking for things, selling things in trade, in LFG. As a level 1, I couldn't see the queues myself, but another kind player shared his screen with me via Discord and showed me how many people and groups were queued up for heroics. And there were just too many for me to count. So I discussed it with my friend, and we jumped servers. I'd told the GM I would be leaving the server, and if the guild was going to join the new server, we could at least try to recruit people there, and I would be okay to play with them again. If not, so long, and thanks for the fun. But they were not ready to leave. They still wanted to get that blasted immortal title because the GM thought that would really upset the people who had already left the guild. Ironically, they did end up getting the title 1 reset later after we left. 2 weeks later, they finally decided to follow, but by then, my friend and I, we got invited to another guild, a so-called hardcore guild. We had to choose between joining them now or waiting for a couple of weeks, hoping that the spots would not be filled by other people, and seeing if our previous guild would transfer as well, seeing if most of them would transfer or if we'd end up with 10 people. So we chose the former. We joined that hardcore guild. It wasn't just the uncertainty, it was also other things. The loot system in the previous guild was basically rolling for items, but at the same time, because I was supposedly a backup raid leader when the GM couldn't show up for raids, I had been sort of expected to develop suboptimal but panty-failing tactics for our raid team to avoid having a random idiot dying here and there, but also to help with recruiting. I don't just mean telling them on Discord, but actually drawing shit in Microsoft Paint to make their positions clear to them, who's using which cooldown, when, who's getting a hand of protection, when, where, and so on. And I felt like I had to put in a lot of extra effort, and I did. I didn't necessarily mind it because I thought I was helping the guild, but I suggested switching to a different loot system because by then, with all the extra effort I was putting in, I had very little to show for it. So, in addition to that, the GM kept bugging me about my friend not really parsing when half our raid was significantly worse than my friend, right? Now, the new guild I joined, they wanted both of my characters as they were running splits. And I said, sure, why not? After all, it was just 2 raids on the same day, around 3 or 4 hours to clear the entirety of tier 7 twice, Nax, Malygos, Sartarian. And I know it's not impressive, I'm only stating that to make it clear that they were somewhat serious about the splits and their so-called hardcore mentality. Now, this guild was using a different loot system, and what you're watching here is my rogue having been renamed, as the kill name was obviously taken on the established server. And you're welcome to watch the video if you're interested, it's on the channel. Their loot system was DKP, but with a twist. You got DKP from attending raids, of course. It would not reset between tiers, which meant that new joiners would be waiting forever and a day to get an item. Basically, as a new joiner, you would only get an item only if no other guild members needed it, and that was after you passed trial. To make things worse, you could also earn DKP by donating bullshit stuff to the guild bank, like potions, the fish you would use to extract oil for potions, that kind of stuff. A lot of older guild members had been donating over, I don't know, the past year or so. So in short, it was like joining a guild, you having 0 DKP and everyone else has like 1 million points. But I wasn't that bothered by the loot. They had decided that they needed my rogue as a main and the priest as an alt for the splits before they saw how I played Shadow Priest. More on that later. As a rogue, I didn't really have that much competition on items. There was some competition, of course, but it wasn't that bad. I figured that being the last to get an item wasn't too bad, when being the last technically meant being the 3rd or maybe 4th in line. So whatever, it worked for me. As with most players that call themselves hardcore, I could easily outperform them anywhere, even in shit gear. Besides, I was playing with my friend anyway. We had fun during raids, basically shit-talking the rest of the raids, laughing at their "we're so hardcore" attitude when they were spending half the raid outperforming, underperforming, or face-planted on the floor. And let's not even discuss how often they would grief you in the raid, unintentionally that is, their DPS or threat issues, because it's pointless. Healers sucked, as you will see with people dying, even on something as simple as XT. DPS sucked, as you should be able to tell, because my rogue was severely undergeared. Tanks sucked even more. Like, if I didn't go for a lot of bosses, if I didn't go with Tricks of the Trade on the tank, it would be, over in like 3 seconds. It was bad, like, yeah, that bad. The raid leader spent half the time coughing into his echoing microphone. It was basically a wheelchair guild carried by a few good players, and I like to think I was one of them. After all, when you end up as number 1 DPS on Freya as an assassination rogue with no cleave abilities, while warlocks are dead because, well, playing a warlock is hard, I guess, I think that just about sums things up. But according to them, they were hardcore. It's not why we, my friend and I, left though. You see, we joined the guild during Nax. Ulduar hadn't been released yet. Now, Ulduar had a 10-man and 25-man mode. Loot in the 25-man raid would be assigned based on DKP with the caveats I mentioned, where both my friend and I would be fucked, in short. In the 10-man raid, however, loot would be designed based on rolling. That would be it. Lady Luck would decide the winner in 10-man. I didn't mind not getting any 25-man loot for a while. I would eventually get lucky in 10-man, right? Or so I thought. Because, as it turned out, our glorious hardcore raiders had other ideas. Namely, my friend and I would not be invited to 10-man raids somehow. We would have to pug them. Keep in mind, I was top DPS, and when I say top DPS, I mean top DPS on progress fights where it matters, and effortlessly. Now I understand that playing Assassination Rogue is not, complex rotation or whatever. Regardless, my point is, they were not carrying me, I was carrying them. So, yeah, there would be progress involved in a solved game. Yes, with many wipes, I might add. This was the reason for which I was not invited, was because two of the rogue items were also wanted by a hunter and a warrior, which also happened to be the shittiest people I had ever met. This guy, and I can't remember which one was the hunter. I think he may have been benched because it wasn't Evoke. Evoke was a good hunter, and the other hunter, I think he was benched due to how shit he generally was. All right, so let's take a look. Now, these two guys, they would eventually be outdone by others in terms of shittiness, but that would happen much later. At the time, these guys were the two worst failed abortions I ever had the misfortune of coming across. As for the raids, let's put the sound on and see what they sounded and what they looked like.
Kicks, guys, come on. Yellow's first.
That's my bad, I was killing spree.
3 on the river.
I was, of course, playing my rogue. As you can see here, AXCX, don't Google that. And I was, as you can see on the interface, Assassination.
Spirits. And as Furion said, ranged on Snap Lasher, melee on Storm Lasher.
I'm rooted. I'm gonna get gimped by the mob here.
Yeah. Get the roots out. It's fine.
We can push.
Get the roots and push them. Yeah, push them. Low VBR Void.
I'm in the river, Lovey.
3.
Run away.
Get some boss on Void. Ground Hammer.
I need a stamina fast.
Sinmar BR Fury set.
There's a beam on
Run
the
away.
mushroom.
Yeah. If there's a beam on a mushroom, look for a new mushroom. Go into the mushroom in the river, Holly, so you can heal.
Go.
Ground Hammer.
Tree. It's not near mushroom. It's dead. Can anyone get my roots? I can't do anything.
Roots.
Mind just bubble it.
Oh, Finish the ad here.
Next one's gonna be explodey boys.
Yep, we can just group up now because they're
Bubble. BR of evoke. Or does wait? It's fine. Just wait.
Too
Don't
late, sorry,
accept.
don't accept.
Don't accept it then.
Holding, holding, holding. Holding, holding,
North
holding.
three.
Now.
Go.
AoE
Northern
taunting.
three and finish them.
Use health stones, health stones, health stones.
I got him, it's okay.
Finish this one ad. Boots. Mushrooms. Keep them a bit together.
Now, the other rogue you can see here, this guy was playing combat, so obviously he had access to Blade Flurry. I didn't, but that still did not make much of a difference.
We're gonna get the
Tree.
roots again soon.
Trees in
Ready.
like the ready bit of the woods.
Run out.
I need help on this.
I'm on it with you, Ford. Don't worry.
Run out.
On the roots now.
Get the
Good job.
roots. Ground tremor. Can we finish? Okay. Spread out a bit. Don't get caught with overlapping stuff. Trio.
Somebody said something? Can I get an innovate, please? Who are you?
Ground
That's
tremor.
it.
3. Behind fire.
Getting ready to taunt, Lid. Be ready.
Yes, you can take it.
Taunting now. Careful your threat, man. You pulled it
Run
right back
away.
off me.
Melee Ghost Storm Lasher. You're bursting down the water
Run
spirits.
away.
Take your snap lasher back.
Roots.
I'm kiting out wide.
Snap Lasher needs way more.
Yeah.
Yeah. All ranged on Snap Lasher. All melee on Storm Lasher.
Go.
Ground Tremor. Push them.
Explodey boys.
Run away.
Move that ad
Run
up.
away.
Move the boss out of all the sunbeams.
Finish the 3 here.
Run away.
Stack up. Stack up, stack up, stack up, stack up.
They're okay positioning here unless we get a sunbeam. No, we need to move. Get ready. Get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready. Now.
Run away. Run away.
There's one really high HP one, but I've got it. You have stuns, use them.
Use your health stones if you've got one. It runs low.
Any defensives.
Yeah, health pots too.
I just deal with these ads, they're spread out, keep spreading out so you're not overlapping hits. Deal with the roots.
You need to get me out and way out of
Finish
range.
the
for heal.
ads over the tree. Finish the ads over the tree.
Please get me
Now I
out.
can hit it. Okay,
That's it. Stage 2.
ground tremor. Boss is gonna shoot out pots of seed bubbles. You have to move away from them. Look where they are.
Melee move out,
very
melee
far
move
away
out.
from them. You can drag the boss around. They have a huge detonation radius. Keep moving out of the sunbeams.
Heroism.
And heroism now, yeah. We're far away from the pots. The one with
Melee
pots.
move out. Melee move
Keep
out. Melee
dealing
move out.
with all mechanics here. Move out of.
You're moving
roots.
into pods now.
3.
Move more.
Pots haven't
Sure.
detonated yet. Ground tremors. 3.
Move it again.
Pots.
Move it.
Keep our aim shut, please.
Yeah, I'm doing it. Don't worry.
You're moving into the pots, Nikolai. Go towards the water at the top. Fine. Go down to the bottom now. That's fine. Roots. Get the people out of roots.
Pods. There's-
Please get me out.
Tree.
3.
Run away.
Lots of
Move
pots
it.
underneath the boss. Move it.
Run away.
Don't go through the sunbeams. Also, don't run through the pots. Like, what the fuck was I watching there? Ground hammer.
Roots on Toku. I need to be freed so that I can aim shot the
Get
boss.
the roots.
the back.
Roots.
Melee cat.
Gonna get a ground hammer here. 3. 3 at the opposite side of the river.
3 Glossia.
Roots. Ground hammer. Get the roots. Get Glossier still rooted at the back. Keep moving for the pots. Sunbeam incoming, move.
Move it, move it, move it.
Move towards the side or towards the river, yeah. You can go over the river, that's fine. Roots. 3. Behind Freya. Trees always spawn near Freya, so just be aware of it. Watch out for the pots.
Lots of pots in a river.
Right, so let me try to
3.
explain something here, right? And it might take a moment until that thing covering the bottom, the damage meter as it were, goes away. Let me see if I can find, yeah, this one should do. You could see me finishing as WPS here as a single target spec because assassination, for all its simplicity, does not have cleave on an ad fight, right? This, by the way, on number 5, Doomface, that was my friend, my real life friend. So this guy who was able to raid with us here in this guild and do a decent job on progress. He was Frost, not Unholy, so that's why he's not much higher there on the damage meter. This is the same guy people had been whining about in the previous guild, right? And this, well, this wasn't the worst of it. This is what things looked like constantly on just about every progress fight. If I was not number 1, I was at the very least top 3. And again, this is another hard mode, and at this point I was already fed up with these people, to tell you the truth. Now, I wanted you to watch those videos and to listen to the comms just so you would understand what things looked like. Both my friend and I were basically not allowed into 10-man raids because another hunter and a warrior wanted items that we would have wanted. So this resulted in quite a bit of drama, partially and unintentionally caused by me. Because you see, when I saw that I was included in the 25-man progress roster every reset, but not included on the 10-man roster at all, I decided to pug Old War. I figured, why not just get 8 or 9 people from the trade channel, create a raid, because after all, I can easily lead it, and we'll see what we can do. The trouble was, my pug was a bit too successful. You see, we killed Algalon and Yogg Zero, and meanwhile our 2 guild groups consisting of super hardcore professional raiders, well, they couldn't. So a lot of people started raging in completely unsolicited whispers to me about how shit the guild was. Because you see, in Breath of the Lich King, when someone gets an achievement, it's also going to pop up in the guild chat. You know, AX, CX, got some random achievement. So they saw that my pug had just killed Algalon. Meanwhile, the dedicated hardcore guild raiders that were gatekeeping us, they couldn't. Which was hilarious because it pissed off other people in their groups that were like, this guild is so fucking shit, I can't believe it, we're worse than pugs. It was around this time that I was approached by the GM of a different guild, a somewhat more hardcore guild. Hardcore my ass, of course, but let's leave that for later. They needed a shadow priest, and they knew about my shadow priest. Sadly, my character, my shadow priest, was way behind on gear, because, as you can see, my then current guild had wanted my rogue as a main. And my shadow priest obviously would have no priority in splits, but that wouldn't matter to them. It would be fixed, they said. I'll be honest, I didn't hesitate for a split second, because I was super tired of these raging retards I was playing with. It wasn't just that the people I was raiding with were mediocre, and you could see them griefing the raid, dying like retards, and so on. It wasn't just the gatekeeping for World War X. It wasn't just the rigged DKP system. It was also the fact that the worst players were constantly giving good players attitude, as in, you know, you would have some retard like that warrior here who would face plant on just about every raid, screaming at people, calling them retards and so on, which was annoying quite a lot of them. I was kind of immune to it. I was basically taking the piss out of him, asking him if he's tried equipping a weapon to do some DPS from time to time. But quite a few people were already quite upset with this fucking retard and his friends. Now, the leadership, as in the raid leader and the guildmaster, tolerated him for whatever reason. Maybe out of pity, because this guy was a really sad case. I mean, raised by a single mom, wearing the worst glasses ever, as in eyesight problems, not exactly a brainiac, and so on. Maybe they felt some sort of sympathy for someone in his position. I wouldn't know, I don't care. Either way, I G-quit on the spot and I joined the new guild, the one that approached me. My friend, the DK, he didn't. It was the end of WoW for him for a while, because his wife was about to give birth, he had a new job, so you know how things go. Oh, just before I switch over, again we can go to Thorim. This is hard mode, and it should be the very first one, as in the first kill. And again, you can see me climbing there. I have been griefed quite a bit in this raid. I'm not going to make up excuses for not being number one. I will just say that I had been griefed quite a bit. Constantly asked to get out from one leg to the other because other retards couldn't do jack shit. And they were dying, as you can see, left and right. I mean, imagine dying here as a hunter or as a priest, right? Now, just a brief pause, I guess, to go over the logs from that time. For XC, as you could see, with dead people, with retards griefing, and so on, I still managed to score a 99. The rest of the parses, they weren't that impressive, to be fair, but at the same time, you have to remember that I was competing against people who had hard mode loot, whereas I was still wearing pretty much full Nax gear. Like, I don't think I had received a single item in Old War due to that DKP system I mentioned. And that wasn't really the issue. The issue I had, oh yeah, the guild was called Muppet Show. I had completely forgot the name. Oh, the log has been archived, so I may not actually be able to see much here in terms of damage done. But needless to say, the rest of the guild hadn't exactly been parsing there. Either way, I should mention how the whole G-Quit thing happened. That couple of people, the hunter and the warrior I mentioned, they were generally picking on other people. They had tried to give me a hard time, but usually the actual leadership was shutting them down, like maybe shut the fuck up Void, because, you know, AC, which is what they called me, is pretty much stopping DPS on progress, so maybe shut it. And that kind of upset him because he was used to being allowed to run his mouth like a retard all the time. And I just started making fun of the guy, like, you don't really matter, you're dead on every fight on progress anyway. When you're not, you might as well just be AFK because your DPS is a joke, so who gives a shit? And that obviously made him rage. He was not used to getting disrespect, as it were. Well, tough luck, because he got it. And at some point I remember telling him that he needs to stop this shit because I have no problems leaving the guild. And he's like, well, where you gonna go? Who wants a rogue? And I'm like, well, unlike you, I'm not a rogue. I am AC, the rogue. So maybe rethink your attitude. The retard started raging, so like I said, I just G-quit straight away. And here I was, having joined a different guild, Spectrum, on the same server. And like I said, this time they wanted me to play on my Shadow Priest. Constantly having been sort of pushed into switching mains, because none of this was, my idea. It's what had been asked of me. Kind of left me in a bad spot gear-wise on both characters, because it's just how things work with split raids. And, it was what it was. Now, this new guild, Spectrum, it was actually nice for a while. It was more like it makes you want to puke kind of nice. Like, we don't insult anyone, we're very tolerant to everyone, unless we don't like them. It was in fact so tolerant that the Discord looked like a pride parade on a good day. And I'm mentioning this for a good reason. You'll see later what I mean. You would join the server and you would have 3 gay people posting gay porn, which would be tolerated because we were tolerant. Did I mention we were tolerant? And we loved diversity, apparently. To me, honestly, it felt like I had joined Stonewall instead of a guild. Basically, we had the flamboyant type of gay. You're talking to another dude about what you prefer, pizza or pasta, and 2 gays suddenly pop out of, out of nowhere, quoting your message with a weird attempt to shoehorn their own gayness into it, like, oh my god, I love pasta. I started loving it the first time a guy fucked me and he made pasta afterwards and it was amazing. That kind of stuff. And if you live in the Western Hemisphere, you've probably come across them before. Read that as you will. Hetero pictures, on the other hand, would have to be posted in the Not Safe for Work channel as not to upset people, because, heterosexual content might upset people, whereas homosexual one doesn't. But you know what? I'm not homophobic, so I can't say I really cared about it. Sure, talk about your gayness all day long, I don't mind. After all, my mute button worked, and these guys, the guys I'm talking about, they weren't exactly important in the guild. They were more like never even could have been, so I wouldn't really miss out on important comms by muting them. But I think I fucked up somewhere along the way, and it wasn't, anti-gay stuff, as you might expect after that intro. I never said anything about it because it just didn't really bother me all that much. I was mostly ignoring it. I never made a joke about them or anything, but what I did do was to make fun of GDKPs and people who joined them. I was quite Eastern European about it too, I have to say that. I think what I said was something along the lines of just buy more gold so you can get cheated out of it in a rigged GDKP by some Iranian who has to give it to his local warlord to save his sister from being gangbanged for the third time this week. And I guess that some people took offense at it because I found myself pretty much shadow banned from loot. Now, the loot system in this guild was a bit weird. Supposedly DKP, but with a loot console as well. Yeah, you try to make sense out of that one if you can. In terms of DKP, it could have been fair. Attendance mattered, etc. But it wasn't. It wasn't fair. It wasn't the worst I have ever seen, but it was anything other than fair. So let me briefly show you what I mean. Right, so here we are, we've killed a noob, 50 attempts remaining, miseries and has dropped, which is basically best in slot for me. And you know what, actually I will just play out the conversation for you before explaining things a bit further.
Yeah, like 50 DPS probably.
Oh, alright. Stone, are they big for you, or?
Yeah, the ones I have now are the ones from the ARC, but they have a crit on it and we don't want crit as
Oh, okay. Then it's probably yours.
I mean, we can also wait out until we see Flame Liberator drop his boots because it will still be an upgrade over these ones.
Just
Big
don't
ad.
equip them yet. We'll sort it out afterwards then. I can live with stone for now.
We swap around the... Oh, no, it doesn't matter.
Oh, we got the strength ring again.
Let me know when it's reset inside so I don't kill myself.
It's reset.
How big is that ring for you, Sendrix? Compared to what you're using now? Seeing as it has no armor pen.
I'd have to get the brand one and then I have to you hit somewhere. I have no idea.
For Esco, it's about 50 DPS.
I'm gonna check Frost.
Yeah, but Sendrix has different rings.
Yeah.
I think Sendrix has better rings than Esco has right now.
I have the 10-man versions.
There's really no difference between me and Sendrix's rings.
Yep. If I got Bloodbath already, just give him the ring. No point keeping
They
like
provide the same stat value, basically, those rings.
And for the DKs, it should not be that big either, right? You're basically replacing Brand's signet ring.
I'm just checking now, but it
Frost,
looks
it
like
shouldn't
it's
be that
about 50 DPS for Frost.
Okay, so it's the same, roughly, for everybody. Then it might actually be...
I don't know that it changes anything.
No.
Ultra, how big is Misery's End for you? The mace. Yes, yeah. In terms of numbers, please.
186.
So we better, and you can replace them instantly. You don't need to hit. That's an easy choice.
Okay.
Oh, let me try to explain this. Again, Misery's End had dropped, and it was best in slot for me. Not only that, but my Dren ISP was at around 20% hit when you counted everything. And this wasn't by choice, quite the opposite, a result of that shadow ban, which meant that I was mostly getting stuff when no one else wanted it again. Whether it was deserved or not, that's up to you to decide. So the best in slot item drops. It's the largest upgrade for me in terms of DPS, and suddenly it's about, well, but yeah, how much of an upgrade is it for you? Even though I was, you know, at the top of the DKP list, thanks to not really getting jack shit. Basically, at that point, if they liked you, they would be like, well, you're top DKP, so you get it. If they didn't particularly like you, they brought up this stuff, but how much of an upgrade is it for you? But can you replace it right away? But whatever. So at this point, it was just me and the raid leader who needed it. Everyone else already got it. But although I'm way above him in terms of DKP, I have to explain that, yeah, it is my biggest upgrade, and you could hear the people laughing at that in the background, by how much DPS and so on. The people they liked, they never had to explain or justify that or whatever. It's like, yeah, you're top DKP, here you go, have fun. This was unfortunately not the end of it. By the time ICC had been released, I still had no cloak, despite us farming a noob, 50 out of 50 from the first reset, if I recall correctly. And yeah, I still didn't have the cloak, I think, and I had no conqueror pieces. The cloak, it went to other people first, even though they were lower on DKP, because suddenly Root Council would kick in when it was my turn to get something. As for the Conqueror tokens, Root Council once again kicked in because we needed to get our tanks and our healers, who were paladins of course, sharing the token, for ICC. And that may have made sense, but that was not the end of it either. Suddenly I found that I was paying the full price for an item, for example the Lich King 25-man heroic stuff, right? Whereas other people like mages and warlocks were getting it for 10% of the price. Why? Because it wasn't their best in slot item. Well, it wasn't best in slot for me either, but you know what I mean. This guild had quite a few British people in it, and if you've never lived in England, I'll give you the short version. Brits will constantly tell you that discrimination is wrong. They'll make you go through compulsory training at every new contract, where they'll tell you to embrace different and diverse shit, all the while actively discriminating against you at every single chance. And yeah, I wish that was a joke, but it's not. Because if you're wondering how a nation that once ruled the empire where the sun never set got to this stage, look no further. That's your explanation right there. But let's not dig too deep into that. When it comes to digging, they're doing a much better job, especially at digging their own graves. So again, loot was not really a priority for me, not even close in fact. And frankly, I would probably still be in the guild if they had gone into Cataclysm, but they didn't. My revenge, if you want to call it that, was on Halion and on Lich King. On Lich King, after our first 40 wipes, we discovered that there were precisely 2 people not dying in traps, not falling off the edge, and so on. Myself and a friend. Every other super hardcore raider did die to the most basic shit. We settled for making fun of them, generally in whispers, that friend and I. He too could see that I was shadow banned. I knew it, he knew it. We could both see the rest of them failing like monks, and all we could do was laugh at it. As for me, I decided to try to be the #1 Shadow Priest on the server for Lich King and for Halion. I have succeeded. On Lich King, unfortunately, I was just #2. The Shadow Priest who was #1 had significantly better gear, but his guild was also using significantly better tactics and a better comp, so they were getting, I think, 2 rooms, whereas with us, I lost count of the rooms. In what concerns Halion, the video is also on the channel if you'd rather watch it with the music on and so on. Maybe I will skip through towards the end. And I did not only succeed in being the #1 Shadow Priest on the server, I actually got much higher than that. It's something you might see here. So this is the log at the time, right? And this is the guild run. But after this, I've included another screenshot, basically over the video, an overlay. And this one, as you can see, it's the damage in Ruby Sanctum on Halion Heroic 25. All DPS, all factions, all items level, all item levels, whatever. And I actually made it to #1 DPS on the server, not just #1 Shadow Priest. This guy, who I think was #1 on Lich King, he didn't quite do as well here. I might be mistaking him. It might have been a different Shadow Priest. My memory is a bit hazy on that one. But yeah, I was, let's say, more than successful when it came to this part. Now, I mentioned that gay stuff earlier, and like I said, it didn't really bother me, not generally speaking. The one thing that bothered me was that suddenly another person I had befriended got G-kicked. The GM simply posted that the dude had been G-kicked and that he's done something horrible that won't be discussed because it's so serious that chances are the police are looking into it. But I talked to that guy, and according to him, he did nothing and he said nothing. In fairness, throughout my time in the guild, starting in very early Ulduar until the end of Wrath of the Lich King, I don't think I've ever seen him saying anything in the guild chat, like anything at all. He never posted anything on Discord. I've never heard him speaking on Discord. He was, the silent type of player. He had like 10 characters he was running GDKPs with, all of them geared to the teeth, and he was more interested in those GDKPs, so he never complained about loot either. If he was benched for a raid, that was basically a gift for him, a cause for celebration, because, well, you can do another GDKP, right? Well, as it turns out, what I later found out was that he foolishly managed to outbid the dude in a GDKP on a fairly rare item, a trinket. He was thinking rich in game, like super rich. For him, throwing 200,000 at an item was basically nothing. Well, unfortunately, the dude he outbid turned out to be one of our gay raiders, Squeeze, and that was that. So much for fairness. We're fair, tolerant, we don't discriminate, unless you outbid one of our gays in a GDKP when you don't even know who the fuck he is. Will not really give any sort of explanation for the G-kick, will imply that you're basically into pedophilia or something, and we're telling the raiders the police would be looking into it. No. The FBI are coming for the guy who bought a trinket. You're in deep trouble, mister. You've upset one of the alts belonging to his gayness. Yeah, if you're wondering where homophobia comes from, no idea. Probably Nazis or something. But like I said, the guild would not go into Cataclysm, so I left. Cataclysm was coming. I was kind of tired of mana problems, of the Shadow Priest lack of mobility, so I decided to just make 2 hunters on a different server. I would play hunters in Cataclysm, so I joined a random guild, so stupid I can't even remember the name. They just saw my logs and they got super wet, instant invite, but once the raids were released, I was suddenly benched because all the raiders wanted loot first. Yeah, I just laughed at that and I just bugged the raids. There is a video of that on the channel as well, and I cleared them during the first reset, whereas the guild could not. one of my parses there on Chimeron, I think, on one of my hunters, turned out to be number 4 in the world, which apparently drew the attention of a guild. So they approached me and asked me to join them. It was a 10-man guild, little to no drama, and everything went okay. We weren't really that great, I want to say, but we could clear heroic modes, so to be honest, I was happy with that. My second hunter was raiding with a pug at the time. And just to be clear, this is what my parses looked like. For Balrog, this hunter for a few resets was number 2 in the world. Never could do number 1. The people I was competing against, they had dedicated raid groups, as in dedicated to boosting them, not to playing, normally as it were. So I was never gonna get number 1, but I could settle for number 2. After all, this isn't some sort of competition for me. So what I'm trying to say is that I did pretty well in raids, both with the guild and in a pug, and these are mostly from a pug as far as I remember. On my other hunter in Dragon Soul, I can't say I did as well. I tried, I did an okay job, but we never really did parsing strategies, not really. So this was pretty much the best I could do there. Not too bad, not impressive either, but I did okay. So this was just, me in a pug when we got this achievement. Actually, before the guild got it. I got it with the pug before the guild because we weren't really that impressive, I guess. And I got super lucky here, I want to say. Because as you're about to see, I managed to win, during this raid, I managed to win the gloves and the crown, and I even got lucky enough to win the trinket, which you're about to see, I think. So, yeah, overall, things went quite well for me. What I never won was, I never won the mount somehow. I don't remember how or why, but by this time, however, I had started playing on anniversary servers on the PvE realm. And of course, the first thing I did was to level a mage. It's what you're currently seeing in the background. This was on the Thunderstrike server. And I will just leave the video running for a bit. Now, the thing is, I didn't really have plans to play Mists of Pandaria. For whatever reason, that expansion never really appealed to me. I was more of a fuck your pandas type of guy. So I just wasn't into it. My characters had been leveled on the PvE realm, like I said, on Thunderstrike, but I grew quite bored and I suppose disappointed with the realm. It's not just that the guilds were bad, it's also that, I don't know, 70% of the server communicated in languages I wasn't particularly interested in, like Russian, Hungarian guilds, Romanian guilds, French guilds, German guilds, and they were all spamming chat in their own language. It kind of felt like, I don't know, being stuck in that Tower of Babel or whatever. So I was kind of tired of it. So I decided I needed to level 2 other characters, the ones I'm playing in TBC. But it was still classic WoW Anniversary vanilla, as it were, and leveling takes time in vanilla. As it happened, the mage in our Cataclysm guild was constantly low on gold, but he had 2 mages on Spine Shatter. So I asked him if he would be willing to boost me on Anniversary on Spine Shatter in exchange for gold in Cataclysm. He was more than happy to do it, at least he seemed more than happy to agree to it, so we got started. I wasn't too bothered about me paying for the boosts, while he dragged some of his friends to get boosted too, but my expense, both in terms of gold and XP, like, whatever. I was rich enough in Cataclysm, I had plenty of time to get boosted to level 60 on anniversary. I wasn't really going to miss the tens of thousands I was paying him. Then he mentioned that they, the Cataclysm officers in my guild, they wanted to expand to 25 people raids in MOP. And, I said, fine, not a problem. They were also going to invite some older friends who couldn't be bothered to raid in Cataclysm. Fine again, I said. And then he mentioned that I should do the shit jobs in MOP as a hunter. Well, I said, I could, but since you're inviting more of your friends, including hunters, surely the civilized way is to take turns, not just constantly give one person the shit assignment. And that was followed by a long silence from him. No more than 25 minutes later, he decided that, actually, I wasn't paying him enough for the boost to keep the loot. You see, I had been looting the mobs he was AoEing in dungeons. So, from his point of view, if I wanted to keep looting the mobs, I should make it at least double. Now, I should mention something. I had already decided that I was gonna double his amount, but I hadn't said anything about it. Because honestly, I was making like 50 to 60k in a GDKP a single run. That was my cut, and paying him 25k to boost 2 of my characters, that kind of seemed a bit low. So I had already decided to double the payment, but the way he approached that kind of pissed me off. So I said, well, the few Brunklov stacks I'm getting aren't really worth the trouble, so it's okay. I'm not going to keep them. I'm going to mail everything I looted to you, and I will stop looting mobs, no problem. Well, no, he said, you keep looting them, but just mail me the mats. And his friend, who was paying and had been paying jack shit for the boost, loudly agreed. I was like, no, if you want the loot, you or your friend can loot the mobs. After all, I'm the guy paying for the boost. I might as well fully AFK, just do a ready check after each run when I need to run out and to get back inside, and yeah, see you. Because, if it's a business, if I'm buying a service, then it's a business/service, I'm buying the service, you're not doing me a favor, and the way I saw things, I had no need to run from mob to mob and to handle the hassle of looting shit with my 10-slot silk bags if I was supposed to mail him everything anyway. You want it? Go work for it, bro. And at this point, his friend jumped into the conversation, going like, if you were in my guild, I'd kick you. And the thing is, I'm not really one to back down from a confrontational matter, so I was like, bro, I think there's a misunderstanding. Currently, this is my hunter. It's 99.6 in Firelands. So I think I missed the part where you proved that you're even worthy of being in the same group as I am. Never mind me playing in your guild, if you know what I mean. Like, where are your parses? Let me see what you're talking about. Let me see who the fuck you are. And another very long silence followed. And that's how, 2 days later, another officer approached me and told me that, unfortunately, with all the people joining the guild, there would be no room for me in their MOP guild anymore. This was obviously very devastating for me, as I had been too busy playing vanilla and preparing for Burning Crusade, so I guess I had failed to mention that, lol, I'm not really going to play MOP, maybe a GDKP, worst case scenario, if even that. But hey, They had their revenge, as it were. They silenced me, and yeah, I'm sure the people who supposedly replaced me got higher prices and whatever. Don't give a shit. To be clear, I was and I had been paying him too little, in my opinion, as well. It is the amount, we agreed, the amount he requested, because I was like, how much do you want for the service? He said 25, yeah, sure. I had already decided that I was gonna double it, because like, it was embarrassing to pay him that little. But with that approach and that attitude and his idiotic friend going like, I would kick you if you're in my guild, that plan went out the window. I don't know if I'm to blame for that or if he's to blame for it. I didn't think I was in the wrong there, and honestly, I actually was going to double the payment without being asked to do so. Because again, I was getting a 60k cut in a 2-hour GDKP, so paying him 50k instead of 25k was totally worth it, right? But I just hadn't brought it up yet. Obviously, he later changed his mind, possibly due to those discussions and to my refusal to loot anything that I wasn't going to keep. But I mean, bro, look, if you're watching this, how do I explain this to you? I'm not a fucking maid. You don't go like, you go loot the mobs and send me the loot. I am totally not a maid. At the time of our conversation, you were unemployed and I was working on 700 a day. You are not in a position to tell me to go and basically clean up after you. And since your friend was getting boosted at my expense, how about have him pick up that shit? Because I don't mind. And honestly, if you were unhappy about the price which you came up with, we could have discussed it, but again, I was already going to double it. But, you know, not when I'm told bullshit like that, like you're going to do the shit jobs, we're going to bring our friends, your friend telling me that he would G-kick me if I was in his guild, like, I don't even know what the fuck that is. In short, we're not in the United States. If I don't like the service I get, I'm not tipping. I did pay the agreed amount, but I did not double it in the end. I'll skip over how this mage got G-kicked on the PvE anniversary server. Again, due to another rigged loot system, one that I hadn't even brought up. There's a separate video on the channel for that if you're interested in low quality drama. Just look it up. There's one point I want to get across, one thing I want to say. The only time I can remember in WoW when we've not had drama caused by something related to loot was for a very brief moment when Activision introduced something called personal loot, and they actually forced people to use that. If you got lucky, you got loot. If not, go again, better luck next time. It was honestly amazing. No drama, no more GM and officer groupies, no more e-girlfriends, none of that stupid shit that leads people to behave the way I described in this video. Now, people have a lot of hopes for a lot of good stuff when it comes to Classic Plus. But my take on it, if it comes without personal loot being enforced, you can forget about it. You're going to meet the same old sweaty real-life losers with no jobs, no families, no accomplishments worth mentioning, and their only goal is going to try to act up, to try to look hardcore, to parse, to chase that brief high, that 99, that 100, that the rest of us get anyway. They're the ones who are going to make your WoW experience shit with their backstabbing bullshit and their rigged systems and whatever. And as long as they're not being forced back into their cages by the developers using personal loot, they're not going to go away. Because where would they go? The rest of us might have our families, our kids, our careers, our investments to concern ourselves with. What do you think these guys have? It's this, guys. That's all they have. Like this game. And I'm not, saying that in a patronizing manner, because I play this game too, and chances are you do too. But they'll never go away. And they will never, ever start acting like human beings unless they're forced to. Now, I think we'll wrap this video up here because it's probably long enough already. I really do hope that you've been watching it on company time, or at least at 4 a.m. when you've got insomnia or something like that. So, if you've made it this far, I hope that this has been at least somewhat entertaining to you. Perhaps it got you on a trip down memory lane. And, thanks for watching. I will let this sort of finish with a nice moment I had here during this run, I think. Not quite sure, but we'll see. Whenever I kill these guys, it might have been here, it might have been in a subsequent run, but at some point, as I was leveling here, yeah, it was this run. I just happened to get that BOE as well, which came in pretty handy on my Shadow Priest. So yeah, again, thanks for watching, and, have a good one.